Hello and welcome to day three of Shadow School. Here we go. Today we are contemplating and working with the third gene key, Shadow of Chaos. I am Brianne Elise Miller, your host, guide, spiritual leader in these conversations. I'm excited about this gene key today. I'm excited about this shadow today. I've got a lot of experience living in this in this shadow and also in the gift. So let's talk about the gene key in general. I'm going to consult my notes here. There are so many words to keep track of in these gene keys. So here in the third gene key, we work with the shadow of chaos. And the ultimate end goal over here is the city of innocence, which is so beautiful and playful and full of laughter and just dances with life in such a fresh way. And the way that we get there is the gift of innovation and really change and evolution in life. And the big dilemma here that keeps us stuck in the shadow of chaos is this dilemma of clinging. Humans have many fears around chaos. One, that we are just living this existence in a world of total randomness and chance. And that's a huge fear. And that makes us have some maybe not so desirable or productive behaviors. And we can explore that later. It also means that we have a fear that we are powerless to this reality that we're living in. And especially like in comparison to weather, the nature, the cosmos, all these things, we really see ourselves as being separate from these things. The duality of our nature gives us that view. And then, of course, we have hundreds and hundreds of years of society and us agreeing to, whether we're explicitly or not agreeing, we're agreeing to societal views and norms and beliefs and structures that are built on this concept that we are separate from nature. And not only that we're separate from nature, but somehow we're supposed to have dominion over it, right? We're supposed to have control over this situation, we tell ourselves. And yet we also have this underlying fear that it's just total chaos and we have absolutely no control. So you can start to see how this shadow of chaos feels so destabilizing, so unsafe for humans. And then another huge fear that comes through that really relates to this dilemma of clinging is the fear of change. So when we're in this place of living in chaos that we perceive the world to be, it's terrifying to change. What we try to do is like double down on having all of these false illusions of stability, certainty, and safety in our lives. So we look to the structures and the systems around us, our religions, our schools, our companies, our governments, any ways that we're organizing anything in our lives, our family units even, that create some semblance of stability, structure, order to life. And we cling to those desperately. We also then tend to cling to stability for ourselves. So this means we get really attached to aspects of our identity. So I'm getting real excited here. Whew. I see this everywhere I look these days. We are over-indexing in how we label ourselves. And let me just tell you, I'm a huge fan of personality typing systems. I'm a huge fan of anything that gives us data to have a new lens of how to look at ourselves and the world and some of the protection mechanisms that we've created and coping behaviors that we've created in life to get ahead, to keep ourselves happy and safe in our limited view at the moment that we create them. However, what I see is that we all grasp and cling to these things and will just fight to keep them as is. It's just the way I am. I'm an introvert. I'm an Enneagram 8. I'm these things. I'm an INFP. I'm a whatever. Insert. I have blonde hair. We can go on and on and on. The groups that we put ourselves in. Yes, I see you, Rokita. I love you. Thank you for being here. Understanding protection mechanisms is huge. Understanding our attachments to things is huge. Understanding what we are clinging to that is giving us this illusion of certainty and stability. The Gene Keys offers that these are called anchor points, which I think is a really great way to look at this. So I want you to pause for a moment here with me and consider all of the anchor points in your life. This could be a job that you have, the fact that you have a home, maybe perhaps that you live in a certain community, that you're part of a church or a religion, the family that you have, the country that you're a part of, or state or city or whatever it is. Endless options here for you to think about this. Parts of your identity that we were just talking about. What are these major anchor points in your life that you look to that provide you some semblance of a feeling of stability? And now I want you to just pick one in your mind that comes up. I want you to think about what would happen if that went away. What would happen if it changed? And how would that feel? Total chaos? Would it disrupt the entire life that you've constructed? It might. You might go through an ego death. You might have like actual real repercussions for your way of living in the world. The idea here is that we do live in a nature, a universe that is constantly changing. This is different from chaos. This is very different from chaos. Evolution and transformation are very different from chaos. But because as human beings, we get to be so separate and we're living in each of our individual bodies as if we're a separate cell, not connected to or cooperating with anything else, not seeing ourselves as a part of nature. We see ourselves as a part from nature. We have narrowed ourselves. I think yesterday we talked about how we narrow our view in these shadows. And in narrowing our view, we have a limited perception. And so we cannot see greater patterns around us. Yesterday, in the shadow of dislocation, we talked about how we can have a small agenda. Like humans try to control things and have their own agenda. But really, there's a larger agenda at play in the universe, which is just very simply continuous evolution. That's it. But here in the shadow of chaos, we have this dilemma that we want to cling to everything. We want everything to stay the same. And this fear, this chaotic fear that has us cling and not want to change is actually what creates the struggle, the pain, and the suffering, because we're living in an actual universe where all there is perpetual change. Hey, Nadine. That's it. So imagine if instead of clinging to and having a fear of change and creating and sinking our hooks into all of these anchor points, which are not as stabilizing as we want them to be, as we believe them to be, as we perceive them to be right now. Imagine if instead we trusted in the bigger pattern and saw chaos as a part of a larger harmony, something that works us to a larger harmony. Okay, let's dig in a little bit here. Yesterday in Shadow School, we ended with this analogy of humans and being very thinking focused. And if we compare ourselves to a single cell where the nucleus was always thought to be the brain that made all the decisions and had all the instructions for life, but really scientists have now discovered that the cell membrane, not the nucleus, is what makes the decisions. The cell membrane is where the brain lives of a single cell. If we look at ourselves as humans and we start to think about, is our brain the actual brain of this entire being that we're operating? No, it's not. We're over-indexing on it. The brain, though, does something for us, which is that it really it processes a lot of fears for us, keeps us in those grooves of protection mechanisms and coping patterns. It creates a world and a reality for us that looks falsely stable, that we can cling to, an identity that we think is safe and stable that we can cling to. But really, it's our entire being that is the brain. It's our cell membrane as a human being that is the brain, not the actual physical brain inside of your noggin. And why I want to say that and bring this analogy forward again is because what happens in a world of chaos, if we perceive chaos to be the way of the world, is that we end up separating even more and fighting against each other. We end up competing. We start to see that the world is just, the place where the fittest win, or the people with the most XYZ win. And we end up competing. Everyone's out for themselves in this chaotic world that we have no control over. And so we are just fighting each other to get what we need. That's maybe what the cell nucleus would do, what the human mind has us think is the right approach. The cell membrane and the larger membrane of our human being would have us see the world very differently, would have us operate and perceive the world very differently in a state of cooperation. Cooperation over competition. Recognizing that we are a part of everything, knowing that we are one single cell inside of a bigger, larger body, that we need to actually cooperate in order to be a part of everything that we're in. We're like fighting against our natural ability to cooperate, to create together, to embrace that even when things seem like they're chaotic, they're part of a larger pattern that maybe we just can't perceive. Let's dive into the repressive and the reactive state. I think this one's kind of fun and funny. The repressive state here, so remember, this is the introverted state where the energy collapses inward, in on yourself. It's very repressive. So the expression here is actually anal retention. So here we take on this sense of chaos, and what we do is we tense. We get tension. We get all tense and tight and rigid. And I know so many of us are just walking around giant balls of anxiety and tension. And we even shape our bodies in ways where we hold tension, clench our fists, maybe roll our shoulders down and in. Maybe we're our legs are tense all day. And what this does, that it actually constricts our breathing. And when our breathing is shallow and constricted, it creates more fear in our nervous system. It creates a nervous system reaction. So here, when we're actually taking the expression of chaos inward and becoming tense and kind of rigid and timid and scared as a result, we're bringing that into our physiology, breathing more shallow, and then creating more fear as a result. It's like a reinforcing cycle there. Then on the reactive expression of this shadow, we have disordered. So the reactive, if you remember, is more outward focused. It's external. It's usually a projection of some kind. A lot of times it's very rooted in an anger expression. And so here we have disordered. And this is our fear of life and not having control expressed as rage in the world. And what it does is it actually creates more chaos. It actually creates chaos. It creates the vibration of interference. It creates more destruction energy. It's like anarchy, destruction, and it creates a destructive force. Now, I know, I'm sure I've experienced both of these. Again, like I can see myself and times in my life where I have experienced both of these expressions of this fear of chaos, the shadow of chaos. And I know for sure I've had temper tantrums where I've outwardly expressed destructive force when things were not going how I thought they should go, which is me trying to control the chaos, right? Trying to control life and not change. What we find here is that we move into this gift of innovation. And innovation isn't just about creating new things. It's really about transcending our own programming. This is something we've seen humans do. We've gone from being completely instinct-based to now more mind-focused. And now we have another inflection point where we get to actually work with upgrading this programming once more to be more like the cell membrane in how we operate in the world, to bring these shadows into the light and to examine our protection mechanisms and the way that we've been coping. On and on, all these things that we've been talking about so far in Shadow School. And what is a result of this innovation, this ability to recognize that when we cooperate with life, we trust in life, there's this freshness that happens. It's very playful. Kids are really great at embodying this just natural gift of innovation. They're constantly changing and shifting and mutating. There'll be a character over here playing 1 minute, and then the next minute they've created a whole world. They're just fluidly changing and responding to their environment. This is the type of energy that we move into if we can embrace chaos as play, chaos as moving toward harmony and trust in it. And then we get to this city of innocence. I won't speak much about this concept of innocence, but one of the concepts I really want to bring forward to you is an inquiry. I want you to think about what happens in the world from your current perspective if all of our structures, systems, governments, schools, jobs, companies, societies, what if they're all gone tomorrow? What if there are no laws or rules? And I want you to simply notice with a loving awareness and no judgment, is there a fear of chaos rising in you right now? Are you going, that's impossible because people would just do whatever they wanted and the world would devolve into destruction and chaos? That's a likely response to the question that I asked. An alternative that I'd like to offer is possible if we do the work to move out of the shadow of chaos into the gifts of innovation and the city of innocence, is that we actually start to embody a new vibrational frequency where we see that our attempts to control, structure, order the world that we live in are futile and silly. And that instead, there is a greater order that we're all a part of. We just need to actually tap into that and notice it. Humans can self-organize in a way that isn't destructive, that's cooperative instead of competitive. And so then the answer to that question that I asked could be a world in which things live in harmony with each other instead of a world of chaos. But in order for us to get there, it's not something that we're creating by doing. It's something that we're creating through being. So we actually have to shift our vibrational state and the way that we literally see through our minds and our bodies, the world that's around us and that we're a part of. And let me just check my notes here for a second. I want to make sure I got all of these goodies here. This is so good. Fear of change. We talked about that. We talked about evolution. We talked about how interrelated we are and that life is designed to be cooperative, not competitive. And so I will leave you with this final little bit. Because we are in a time of even more rapid change than we could probably ever remember. So I want you to think about what you're clinging to. And we are in a time where we're in a great transition also from a collective perspective, where we have systems that are ending and collapsing, and new systems will need to emerge that we're a part of. So I want you to consider this. This clinging that we do, this fear of change that we do, is actually a signal of incomplete love. Just think about that for a minute. Clinging is incomplete love. Our grasping on, our resistance to change is incomplete love. We've been talking about in Shadow School how we can bring all of these parts of ourselves back into wholeness through loving them without judgment, loving them fully, unconditionally. Unconditional love is not something that we are largely modeled or taught or honestly feel like that we receive in life. It's something that is out there like a concept, but I think many of us are hard pressed to have experienced it in our lives. True unconditional love. No conditions. That is the type of love that we need to give ourselves so that we no longer have to cling to structures to feel a sense of stability. We need to create this stability. Yesterday, we talked about creating home and belonging inside. Today, we need to talk about creating love and stability and safety inside. So here's what I'll ask you to do. Be probably a little of both. Be the one who is willing to embrace the chaos. Be the one who's willing to love the chaos. Be the one who is willing to love all of the ways that you're clinging to things in life. Notice when you're clinging to things. Notice when you're resistant to change. Notice when you're relying on something outside of yourself for stability, certainty, and safety. Be the one that creates it and here first. Be the one who's willing to sit in the discomfort to do that, instead of constructing a false reality of separation in your world. Be the one that loves yourself unconditionally. I'll leave with that today. Thank you so much for joining me again for Shadow School, and we will see you tomorrow.